Hello, my darlings, and welcome to 24 Days of Advent Adventure. Today is day 1, and today we bring you The Snowman by R.L.Stine. R.L.Stine is 81 years old and he's still writing. Aren't we lucky? This came out in 1991 when I was 15 years old. That was 33 years ago. So let's go back to being the carefree teenagers that we once were. This is the first edition, by the way, as well. Gorgeous. But we're going to go back to 1991 and we are going to meet the most unusual character, the Snowman. Bill Jeffers is not all he seems to be. He has the nickname, the Snowman. Oh dear, poor Heather. I'll just read you the blurb on the back. Heather is so unhappy. Her evil guardian hates her and treats her like dirt. She has few friends and is beginning to tire of her boyfriend Ben. She feels cold and alone. Then one evening, a gorgeous blond guy walks into the café where she works. He calls himself the Snowman, and he understands Heather in a way that no one else does. She's not alone anymore. She feels safe, loved, warm. But is the Snowman what he seems? Or does he pose an unknown threat to Heather? Will she be driven into the cold forever? £2.99 when it was first released all those years ago. There's your ISBN number on the back. Not easy to get hold of, I will say. You might be better off if you tried to download it on a Kindle if you want to read it. There's not many of these first editions around. As I say, it's 15 years. I was 15 years old when it came out in 1991. Doesn't seem that long ago. It really doesn't. Oh gosh. Well, Heather's our main protagonist, and she's dating this drip of a lad called Ben. And I mean, he's lovely as Ben, but he's not exactly Mr. Passion, you know. Unfortunately, she meets Bill Jeffers, the Snowman. And Bill comes across as being everything that Heather ever dreamed of. She loves the Snowman. She's known him for 5 minutes. Classic R.L.Stine novel. The protagonist, Heather, she shoulders everything, the whole burden of what's going on, and doesn't tell any adults. It's classic R.L.Stine, that is, from the teenager's point of view. I wish Heather had told someone what was going on, because they could have helped her sooner and she wouldn't have had to go through all. Bill Jeffers is not a good person, I will say that. And Snowman, that's his nickname. Well, he lives up to his nickname. He really, really does. And I would say Heather's Uncle James, he comes across as being a bit miserly and a bit mean and a bit cruel, but he's actually got Heather's interests at heart. So does Aunt Belle, who that's Aunt Belle and Uncle James. Those are, her aunt and uncle. Her parents have died, and they've left her a little nest egg to suit her, for the rest of her life, basically, get her through university and whatnot, and to provide for her, to give her a home should she, not be in work and she needs somewhere to live. She's got some money behind her. And Uncle James seems to think that every man that comes into Heather's life is after her nest egg. But Ben, no, Ben isn't. Ben couldn't care less what Heather has or doesn't have, because he just loves her. He just loves Heather, does Ben. But Heather doesn't feel the same way. She's just not passionate about Ben at all. And you can see why. He's a bit of a wet lettuce. I'm sorry, but he is a wet lettuce. And Aunt Belle is definitely under Uncle James's control, under his thumb. Heather rebels against her Uncle James because she thinks he's just awful and always telling Heather what to do, and he's made Heather go and get a job at the cafe, and she thinks because she's got all this money that she doesn't need to, why does she need to have a job at a cafe? And it's just a case of, well, Heather, you need to learn that money isn't always readily available, and you've got to get a work ethic, because if you don't get a work ethic, then you're not going to be able to survive as an adult in the adult world. And, because if everything comes to you too easy, it's going to go just as easy, right? So that's why Uncle James is always on at her to get a job and to work at the job at the cafe. And even though she's got money behind her, she still needs to work to get the work ethic. And Heather, oh, bless her, Heather is always looking and wishing and inventing ways to kill Uncle James. Unfortunately, Uncle James dies, and Heather's devastated actually, because she didn't really want him dead. She just used to say it because she was venting or letting off steam. And Aunt Belle is just lost without James. Now, who done the dirty deed? Who killed Uncle James? Oh, Heather, you know, don't you, love? Mm-mm. And that's why we don't like the snowman. Because he had something to do with it. He did indeed. He's a bad, bad snowman. Mm-mm. Yeah, as the song goes, Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream. Well, Mr. Snowman, bring me a nightmare. It was for poor Heather. So, what will become of poor Heather? And will she get the help that she needs? Will she be driven into the cold forever? Ooh, yeah. 29 chapters and 181 pages. So you probably have this read within a day. I know I did all those years ago. It's a lot of fun. Heather can be a bit annoying, with her not understanding the ways of the world and thinking that she's big and clever. But then again, when you're 15 years old, you do think that you're big and you're clever and you can do whatever you want without any, follow up, you know. Yeah, you don't really understand consequences when you're 15. And I would say Bill Jeffers, the snowman, understands only too well that actions have consequences. I just hope we can get to Heather in time before something terrible happens to her. Has it stood the test of time? Yeah, I still think it's a good, fun read. You will get a little annoyed with Heather. I know I did. I mean, I didn't really when I was all those years ago when I was 15, but having reread this as an adult, I'm scratching my head at certain choices that she's made in life throughout this book. Life choices. Yeah, I suppose I'm looking at it as an adult now rather than a teenager. But I just want to get hold of her and give her a good shake and say, What are you doing, girl? What are you doing, Heather? I don't know. Let me see. Which one am I going to read? Chapter 7. Yeah, we'll do chapter 7. Everything glowed silver white. Then a tall pine tree, its branches dark shadows beneath a covering of snow, came into focus. The snow-covered hill sloped steeply at her feet. Heather raised a mittened hand to her forehead to shield her eyes. Her breath came out in little puffs of white against the aqua sky. Her bright red boots crunched noisily over the deep snow. Despite the snow, the air was warm. She was wearing her down jacket unzipped. A long red wool scarf was wrapped several times around her neck. She stepped up to the sled. It was an old-fashioned wooden sled with red metal runners and the words American Flyer stenciled in red on the wood. Such a beautiful day for sledding, she thought. A perfect day. Why am I the only one on the hill? A blue shadow moved in front of her path on the snow. She felt a sudden chill in the air. The shadow was long and lean, a dark blot on the pure, sparkling snow. Heather turned around to see who was making the shadow. Uncle James! He stared at her, then down at the sled. He was wearing the yellow ski jacket and the same baggy brown corduroys, one trouser leg over his boot and one leg under. The sun filled his thick eyeglasses with bright golden light. She couldn't see his eyes. Uncle James, what are you doing here? Do you know how to sled? He asked. Yeah, sure, she said. Then she added to herself, no thanks to you. He had never taken her sledding, not once. He had never taken her anywhere, had never played with her, or taken her to the movies, or done any of the normal things fathers did with their daughters. He had no interest in entertaining her. He kicked at the back of the sled with his black rubber boot. It slid forward a few inches. Let me see you sled, he said. What? It's a perfect day, Heather, a perfect day for sledding. She stared at him, surprised by the request. She still couldn't see his eyes. The sun reflected in the glass lenses, acting as a shield. Okay, she said. She loved sledding. She loved the ease of it, the feel of the gliding so softly, so gracefully. It was so easy. It wasn't like real life at all. It was always like sliding through a soft white dream. She bent down and grabbed the wooden sled rudder. Then she dropped easily onto her stomach on the sled. Give me a push, she said, turning her head back to see her uncle. No, he said. What? No, don't lie down. Sit up. I want to ride too. You want to sled with me? He nodded his narrow head. He looks like a toothpick. Oh, she's not very kind. Is he as brittle as a toothpick? As fragile? She pulled herself up, slid around. Now she was sitting in the front. Climb on, Uncle James, she said. Plenty of room. It took him forever to lower himself onto the sled and arrange his long legs behind her. Hold on to my waist, she said. His grip was hesitant, light. It felt strange to have him holding on to her like that. In all the time she had spent growing up in his house, he'd never touched her except by accident. Except for the times he had slapped her face in anger. She gripped the sides of the sled. The snow sparkled as if a million of tiny diamonds were embedded in it. It became so bright she closed her eyes. "Ready?" she called back to him. "Ready," he replied, tightening his grip on her waist. She leaned forward, moving her weight towards the front of the sled. They began to slide, slowly at first, then picking up speed. Looking down, the slope of the hill seemed steeper than she remembered. Much steeper. Perfect, she thought. Oh, yeah. Right on. A perfect day for sledding. The top of the snow is wet and the ice hard. So fast we'll go down so fast. Like a roller coaster that only goes down, down, down. So perfect. Here we go, she cried happily. They were sliding down now, faster, faster, gliding so easily. Heather felt the wind against her face, listened to the quiet whisper of the runners against the snow. The hill seemed endless. She couldn't see the bottom. She could only see the onrushing white snow. But there had to be a bottom, right? There had to be an end. They were really speeding now. Down, down, plummeting down. She aimed the sled at the tall pine tree, aimed it dead center at the wide, dark trunk. Oh, they were going so fast, like a speeding train. A few feet from the tree, Heather leaned to the right and jumped off. She rolled onto the snow and kept rolling. So cold, so wet, so easy. The loud crack she heard was the sound of her uncle's head hitting the tree trunk. The impact split his head in two, and his body went flying backwards up high in the air. Awakening from her dream, Heather sat up in bed and stretched. Such a vivid dream! She could remember every detail. She dressed quickly for school and went down to breakfast with a smile on her face. Oh, Heather, what a wicked, wicked girl you are! To dream of killing Uncle James when he's only got your best interests at heart, sweetheart. But unfortunately, you can't see that because you're 15 and think you know it all. Don't we all at 15? Actions have consequences. Poor Uncle James becomes a cropper. The whole place is surrounded by coppers. Who done the dirty deed? Was it Ben or was it Jeff? You'll have to read the book, darlings, to find out. Oh dear. But Heather, my darling, you better watch out. You better not cry. I am here telling you why. 'Cause you're gonna come a cropper if you don't do what you're told. That's the best song I could think to do. I'm so sorry, it was terrible. That was straight off the top of my head as well. Oh my goodness me. Yeah, read this for Christmas. It's got everything of our teenage years in here, the way we used to live. Yeah. The attitudes we used to have, not respecting our elders is one of them. Not understanding that actions have consequences is the other. Drippy Ben, limp lettuce leaf Ben, will you come to the rescue? What will become of the snowman? Will we find Heather in time? It's all to be revealed in the Snowman. It's the first one for the 24 days of adventure. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you like what I do, give me a thumbs up. If you really like what I do, you can always give me a follow. And come back tomorrow, my darlings, to see what other hair-raising adventures, ghoulish delights, Christmas terrors disasters galore. What will we come back with? Who knows? But I'll see you tomorrow for day 2. Take care, my friends. Bye bye.